Hello everyone, welcome to the TED Talks YouTube channel. I have quite a popular guest returning for like a series of videos. Mr. Andy Camp is with us today. It's not Sam Thompson from Made in Chelsea, although in my head when I tell people I'm going to go see Andy, I do actually say that.
That is the only compliment I've had to TED.
Literally, I'm like, yeah, Sam. No, that's who's Sam. So today we are going to talk about a load of different things, but this specific video is going to be talking about builder problems, which, I mean, where do we start? Where do we stop? It's just, this is therapy for us, right? If you're not in property, this literally is our free therapy. But we're going to about builder problems, and we're going to talk about, I suppose, more specifically, should you manage your trades one by one? So it's, rip out team, Sparky, plumber, chippy, blah, blah, blah. And you are the project manager of every single one. Or do you get a main contractor, Bob, comes in and says, oh, I've got everyone, geezer. And you manage him, and then he sort of brings them in and makes sure they're on time and the quality, and they do a lot. So main contractor versus trade by trade, I suppose. What have you mainly done?
So I did the opposite of what most people normally do. So I started jumping straight in at the deep end and contracted myself and took on all the subcontractors, took on labourers.
And this was a little small refurb, or was it?
No, this was building two 4-bed houses.
When you say building, you mean there was mud?
There was
built
mud.
a house.
There was a small structure there. I basically doubled the size of the structure.
So it's a new build, for all intents and purposes, a new build.
As close as you can get, I reckon, without it being a new build.
And what inspired you, or what took over you, or which devil was in your soul that you thought, let me manage this? Trade by trade, first ever refurb, and it's a new build-ish.
I don't know, I think I'd spoken to a lot of people. I'm pretty lucky in the sense that I've got some great people in my life who I could call upon for advice and help in that sense. But
you're welcome, man.
Not this guy. And I think that's really important. But I also I came to the conclusion that you've either got to jump in the deep end and try and learn it, and then everything else becomes easy. That's kind of the way I thought about it, which might have been pretty naive.
I mean, did you learn from that experience?
100%. I think everyone who says once they do a build when they're not using a main contractor, they learn the ins and outs of actually project managing a build so much better, because they really understand the intricacies of when does this person have to come in and who has to follow that and how much notice do I need to give them, and I need to order the windows on day one because they take 12 weeks. And all these little things you start to learn, and you only learn them by making mistakes.
And then I suppose when you learn these, if you do work with the main contractor in the future, you then know, are they taking the piss? Or actually, windows do take that long. I won't say anything here. What was your single biggest challenge on that particular refurb, let's say, managing those individual trades, and also not maybe knowing exactly what was going on because it was still new to you?
Yeah, no, it was completely new. I think my day pretty much consisted of Googling how to fix a plasterboard to a wall in the morning, then meeting the dry liners.
And be like, dot and dab, mad, yeah.
Dot and dab, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what it was like, which was like havoc, but it worked. And I think the biggest challenge was you are dealing with more people. When you have a main contractor, you're effectively dealing with one person, which can be fine if it's fine, and it can be really bad if it's bad.
Yeah.
In a sense, with a trade team, you have a lot more potential to have problems, but you're also diversifying your risk in that sense at the same time.
Because they're all different companies, different people, different... I know what you're saying. I think it does diversify the risk, because also if one of them goes bust or something, which is happening so much now, who cares?
Yeah, and also if you have a problem with them, they're gone in a week.
Yeah.
You don't have to deal with them for the rest of the build.
And I think that's a really good point, actually. I didn't think about it. It's like that relationship. With trades, it's like, right, our relationship is 2 weeks, and maybe it'll be longer if you're good, 99% not. But then with a builder, it's like you have to just through gritted teeth the whole time. Yeah, we're good friends. Yeah, jokes, prick. I know that I've seen myself doing that. So that's a really good point. And on this refurb, managing these individual trades, did they kind of look at you and say, you don't know what you're doing, you're new to this? Like, did they ever kind of view you with a bit of like, who are you?
Yeah, again, it was just a quick learning curve of I clocked on the first few trades, really noticed that, and then I had to find a way of trying to convince them that I knew what I was talking about. And it kicks you up the bum a bit to kind of go, I really need to suss this out before I turn up on site. I can't turn up on site and just go, okay, go for it.
Yeah.
I've got to know exactly what they're doing, when they're doing it, how long I think it's going to take them.
Mm-hmm.
I might be wrong on a few of those.
Of course, it's always going to be.
But you've got to do your homework, haven't you?
You have to, because they, at any chance to take the piss in any element, they will, right? Especially especially when you're dealing with a new build where there's 101 things from the ground to the top ridge tile of the roof that can go wrong. That building regs need to check. Well, I don't know how much they check it either, but there's so much that goes into it. With a buy-to-let, yes, you can get stuff wrong, but your house ain't gonna fall down. It's so much more complex with a new build. So after this experience, obviously coming out of this with so much more experience, for your next refurb, did you think, I'm doing it again, I love it?
I did, yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. It's mental. Do you know, everything's got its ups and downs, and on the one hand, yeah, there's less risk and your budget's coming cheaper. On the other hand, you're giving yourself away to a project for a while. On the other hand, sometimes when I've been working with main contractors, I have frustrations that drive me crazy at the same time. I think it swings and roundabouts. I mean, you've just done one, so it's similar, isn't it?
It is. I think, I don't know if you're finding this at the moment, but the reason I have to do it trade by trade is because I just could not find a decent main contractor who could start this side of 2023.
Yeah.
It was just no, busy. Like even now I'll get a text, hey, sorry I didn't reply to you 3 months ago. I'm booked up for 9 months. Let me know if I'm going to book it in. I'm like, 9 months I'll be a different, but I don't know what's going on in 9 months. Mm. So for me it was more of a necessity, and I sort of had to do it. The thing is though, it was the easiest refurb because we've done X many before, but you know what? It's always a pain in the arse, right? Until you get the completion statement, and then you're like, let's do it again.
Yeah, you forget about 3 weeks later, don't you?
Let's put nails in my eyes again for a month because that was fine. Yeah. It's just like a fallacy of property investors, right? We hate it during it, and then we're like, oh, all right, let's go back. So, I think there's a really good point there you said, is that you get consumed by it if you manage it trade by trade, because you are the project manager, and a project manager for new builds and for other stuff, they're kind of there all the time, and they're always doing stuff and making stuff happen. So for you as a property investor, not as a project manager, do you think it's worth your time and has been worth your time project managing it when you could maybe outsource it or find a main contractor and have more life to do other stuff?
Yeah, I think that's a massive point. I think we're running businesses, and a lot of us forget it. I've definitely forgot it a lot of time. Because you're so project based, I'm on this refurb right now, I'm on this build right now, you forget that your business is way beyond your renovation or your build. And it can really easily get to the end of that build, and I've done this, where you get to the end of the build and you go, I got nothing on there. Yeah. Because I've been so consumed by this thing, but I saved 20 grand, which again, there's a massive debate there. What have you lost? Potentially a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we look at your deals, and we're going to talk about these later, if we look at the deal you're working on now, with say 600 grand profit, you've saved 20, but you've lost 600, arguably, right?
Potentially.
And so I think, but it's so hard to see when you're in it, because you're like, I'm saving 20 grand, I'm learning, I'm doing this, and plus, even a main contractor, we're talking so far as if a main contractor is going to kind of be the saving grace, or going to actually make our lives easier, and they should, on paper, technically, but they don't. And so it's quite tough for us to kind of give the viewers and listeners and say, look, well, don't do this and do this, when actually they're both pretty tough and they're both pretty shit, kind of even at the best of times. Have you worked with a main contractor in any of your refurbs?
Yes, we've got 2 live at the minute with main contractors.
Okay.
Up in Norfolk.
And those are commercial conversions or just normal refurbs?
1 commercial conversion, 1 refurb.
And how are you finding, so Norfolk is...
Oh, sorry, 3 and 1 in Huntingdon.
Okay, so Huntingdon's an hour and a half from here, 2 hours?
Hour and 15, something like that. Yeah.
Hour and 15, and then Norfolk's 3?
3 hours.
So, I can't be bothered to drive that long. They're fairly, coming here was a big thing, getting me out of countryside, but I would call that distance, especially Norfolk.
Yeah.
So how are you finding using a main contractor, especially at distance?
Again, in some ways it's great. We've actually happened upon 2 great contractors this time.
Okay.
So far, we're about 2/3 of the way through 2 of them, and probably halfway through another. So far it's been brilliant. I think what I say with all contractors is they've always got a downside. Every contractor does. Yeah. Some of them work crazy fast, but they break things. Some of them don't work fast enough, because they're juggling 5 projects and then you moan about them not being fast enough. Some of them penny pinch, which is kind of understandable, but sometimes it's really frustrating to work with. Some of them, there's all sorts of issues. Some of them don't even have the experience, especially with some of the commercial conversion stuff. It's a bit different.
It's another level, right? Because you're putting fireboarding in, you're putting different fire systems in, like I said, different acoustics, like there's so much that, again, in a buy-to-let and flip, you're just not really doing.
No.
So, if people are watching this, it's their first refurb, let's say it's like a flip, a buy-to-let, HMO, something kind of small, but it'll feel huge when you're doing it. What would you advise for them to do? 1, if they're local, so within an hour, within 40 minutes, and 2, if they're at a distance.
I think if they're at distance, for me, I don't think it's an option. Unless you're really willing to give your life away for a few months. I think you've got to find a contractor and you've got to get to a place where you only need to be there a couple of times a week max, on a bad week. That's the way I see distance. But then for me, I value family quite highly. I value time with my wife quite highly. So, I don't know, that's my opinion on that. But if you're local enough, within like 40 minutes or something like that, it depends on loads of factors, kind of what we've touched on so far. So you've got, at the start of every project, you have this 1 month scramble where you got the keys earlier than you thought and it's sprung upon you, and then you go, I don't want any downtime. How do I get someone in there as quick as possible? So your first thing to like bear in mind is, okay, what are my options? I've gone out to 25 main contractors, none of them have come back to me. I don't think I can do any more. I'm in a corner. And then your decision's made. But equally, you might have a few decent quotes at the same time. That's my first thing I'd look at.
I think that's a good point, is like the reality of the market, because right now it is very, very tough. Materials, getting them and then getting them at a decent price, and then getting builders at decent prices who are not inflating it because they can, and hey, you would, right? It's business, it's economy. But I've been in that corner, where it's like on this one I had a key undertaking. I had the keys almost instantly and I was like,
now what?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone here, it's not even close to you, it's not even close to like other friends. I was just like, I literally it's all new. Like there was no there was nothing. I knew one person in the area who, even though his referrals were shit. So it was it being in that corner, and you're like, either I get someone in now who's maybe going to be crap, or I do it trade by trade where they could kind of come in sooner. But you said 25 contractors. Like for people watching this, I probably spoke to. I mean, that's a good reality. I probably spoke to 100 or messaged or tried to get in contact with about 140, 150.
Oh, so I'm talking spoke to, like.
Spoke to. So that's good. If you speak to 25, that's fine. But I would easily be messaging 150 for this one, and spoken to like 2 main contractors.
Oh, really? That few?
2 main contractors, and then the rest were like trades. But you got to think, like, you've done 50 viewings to get one deal. You've then done 50 months in legals, it feels like, which we'll talk about one of your deals. And now you're like 50 conversations with people who don't really give a shit about you, aren't really good at conversating, or not really interested in your business a lot of the time. And then you got to do this refurb, and you got to post on Facebook easy, like it was easier, and you got an amazing refurb. And it's like, the reality really doesn't match the actual reality. So I think that's really good advice. Yeah,
I think the next thing that like plays for me is, what's your long-term goal with this? Like we've talked about you've got to run your business aspect, but I think as well, especially if you're new coming into this, is this something you want to do a lot? Do you want to do loads more refurbs? And that was my dilemma initially, and I thought, I want to do this a lot. To do this a lot, I need to do the best I can be. To be the best I can be, I need to understand this inside out. And I genuinely believe the only way you can do that is by managing it by trade and dealing with the problems.
Yeah, it's so painful. Like I just, it makes me shiver just thinking about doing it again.
You will. I bet you do.
I'm doing no more refurbs. I'm putting this in verbal agreement, right? And I'm not doing any more refurbs. Those are really good points. I think another thing is, I suppose, people could find a project manager, but where do you find one?
I don't think that's that easy. I've tried it.
It really isn't.
Because you also have a lot of debate there as to how do you motivate them. Are they on a fixed fee?
Yeah.
They therefore don't care about prices. So does that mean you're going to be finding all the trades?
Yeah, you need a PM who comes in and does what we do.
Exactly.
Basically, which, again, like, you get deal sources who do it, but you are deal sources, you're not project managers. Number 2, real project managers are on new builds. I don't know how interested they are in this stuff. A QS or an architect might be a good angle to kind of manage this stuff, but again, an architect isn't a PM. And so I think there's a lot that goes into this. It's not as easy as finding a builder, actually, like to find a PM. I mean, top of my head, I know one person, and I met at a networking event or some TV show thing, and they're a project manager for a new building QS, and they'll do it for us. Mm-hmm. It's one person, and we've met hundreds of thousands of people in our life. So it's very, very difficult to find. But if people can, and if you can get a sourcer who is good, who has done lots of them, I would say look to pay them a percentage with a good contract, scope of works, all that kind of stuff, right? That you need to give builders. But yeah. It's tough, isn't it?
It's a hard balance. I don't think that's very achievable, especially at the low level.
Yeah.
Once you've got to start scaling up and you're doing 300, 400, 500 grand builds,
yeah,
it becomes easier, right?
I think maybe there's a business idea for you because you love trades so much by the sounds of it. Maybe you should offer this service. I'll pay you. If I will pay you, then anyone else will pay you.
Yeah.
Take all my problems.
I don't like it that much.
Amazing. Well, look, everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you hit subscribe, hit like, and leave a comment, and go follow Andy on Instagram. He posts once every quarter, so every now and then you might learn a thing or two.